Let's bring in Newt Gingrich. He's a Fox News contributor. He's a former Speaker of the House. He's a former Republican presidential candidate, and he writes a free newsletter available at gingrich360.com. Mr. Speaker, we were talking earlier about it. It sounds like the Democrats are looking for another reason to perhaps impeach the president. Is that how you see it, or are they just trying to muddy the water?
No, I think that ever since about 10 o'clock on election night, most liberals in this country wake up every morning knowing that Trump has done something horrible. They just don't know what it is yet, but they're confident they'll find it during the day. And so this is the latest. I mean, cleaning out the National Security Council, totally within his rights. That was an outrage. This is an outrage. I mean, imagine people like these who go through their life being outraged over nothing. I mean, what will happen to them when they finally run into a real outrage? Mm-hmm. You'll notice, by the way, that when Hillary Clinton's staffer takes a hammer to physically destroy the hard drive of a computer, which I would have thought was obstruction of justice, nothing happens. We have had no action yet on the FBI agents who lied to the FISA court, which is, by the way, also a felony, and very certainly comparable to what Stone is being attacked for. But you get on this list, and somehow, if you're a conservative, and Sidney Powell's written 2 books on this from the standpoint of having worked in the Justice Department, that the level of corruption among some of the career professionals is amazing, and they're perfectly willing to use that bias. This case with Stone is truly absurd, as the former acting attorney general pointed out. For a guy for whom this is a first offense, a nonviolent offense, not drug-related, not violent crime-related, to be given as a recommendation the maximum sentence is truly extraordinary.
So I guess that's one of the things they're worried about. Among the people upset by the New York Times today, they worry a firewall has been broken where the president weighs in. They tell the DOJ what to do, and the DOJ acts on the president's wants. They worry about our system crashing into itself.
Well, first of all, the President of the United States has in the Constitution the unfettered power to pardon anybody he wants to for any reason. So if he really wanted to intervene, he could just issue a pardon. And it'll be over.
Sentencing.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done that.
And ultimately, it's up to a judge anyway.
Yeah. So the actual sentencing will be by a judge. But I do think any reasonable person, which excludes most of the Democrats, but any reasonable person would look at this and say, this is a real abuse of power by some career lawyers who are anti-Trump, going after a Trump supporter at a level which they would never apply to somebody who had supported Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders.
Right. Okay, let's talk about the race, because Joe Biden, everyone thought he was going to win. He was going to be the nominee. He was front runner a few months ago, and now he's down in South Carolina. He came in 5th in New Hampshire, 4th in Iowa, and he's throwing out some more TV appearances, trying to rebound from those losses. Do you think it's a lost cause?
I think the only chance that Biden has to get back in the game is to have 2 debate performances, or 2 debates between now and South Carolina. He has to be so up on his game, so aggressive, so practiced, so willing to slug it out, that people look up and go, wow, that's the Joe Biden I wasn't aware of. If he just sleepwalks through these 2 debates, I think that at that point he's basically gone. He won't have the resources. He won't be able to compete. And I've seen no indication yet that they understand that this is life and death for his career, and that the only way he can turn it around is to stand on the same stage with Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Sanders and beat them, and be convincing that he's the right guy. And I doubt very much if he's capable of doing that.
Well, and in fact, Newt, to your point, it was the debate on Friday night in the state of New Hampshire where Joe Biden, was not good, and Amy Klobuchar, was good. A lot of the Biden people apparently went to her, the late deciders. But going forward, the lead story right now in the New York Times, Newt, is Democrats split deepens anxiety among centrists, because right now Bernie Sanders is the face of the party. And as the party centrists know, Bernie Sanders, the socialist can't win.
Well, I don't want to go quite that far yet. I think it's not likely that he could win, and it's probable that he would be beaten in sort of a George McGovern disaster of carrying 1 or 2 states. But look, you're about to have Bloomberg as the new face of the Democratic Party.
Yep.
Bloomberg has hired 2,100 people. He is spending at least $1 billion. I was just looking a little while ago at various people who are on Twitter who are doing all sorts of weird things. And Bloomberg is now buying ads on some of the weirdest sites in America.
Influencers.
I think he's spending $1 million
just
a day
to drown the
on
system.
social media.
Yeah.
So
So he will spend. He'll spend more on social media than the entire Klobuchar campaign.
So Newt.
And that doesn't count TV advertising
Right.
and staff and everything else.
So the problem
So
is,
I think what you're going to see happen by Super Tuesday, you're going to begin to realize how big a threat Bloomberg is.
and the word is, some people believe Biden is releasing all this opposition research video and sound on Bloomberg on his past exploits. As a Republican mayor, then an independent mayor, then a Democratic mayor, he was for stop and frisk, said some harsh things about minority communities. Then he's for bragging about destroying coal plants. That can translate to a lot of jobs. And then in redlining, he talked about how financing, forcing banks to give financing to people not worthy in redlining helped perpetuate the 2008 collapse of the economy. All these things are out there, which are defendable. But Bloomberg has to figure out, does he want to defend it or apologize for it?
Well, that's right. Now, the other example, which will be fascinating, is what percent of his fortune came from cutting deals with the dictatorship in China? When the Chinese dictatorship put pressure on Bloomberg News, they caved totally. And he basically said, look, we're not going to print anything which makes the Chinese government unhappy. So you have to ask yourself, what share of the money he's going to spend to try to buy the presidency actually came from China because of his willingness to be cozy with the dictatorship.
Right. That is fascinating because the president tough on China famously, and Democrats were saying that the president's even tough on China, and that helps their cause. So they're going to be twisted into a pretzel trying to find a candidate.
Newt, real quick question about the people who voted in the Republican primary up in New Hampshire. The president did like 70,000 more than Barack Obama did as an incumbent. Why are so many of the party faithful showing up to support the president who doesn't really need it in the primary?
I think 2 things. And I would say that Brad Parscale and the team that they've assembled have done an amazing job of reaching out to people, building these huge rallies. But I think there are 2 big drivers. One is there are a lot of people in America who are really proud of Donald Trump, and they're really excited by what he's achieving, and they really want to show that they're with him because they realize it's a fight. The other, frankly, is, if you don't mind my using the language, there are a lot of people just plain pissed off at the way the House Democrats have behaved, the way the thing you just said a minute ago from Elizabeth Warren. And I think they want to go out and sort of get in the face of the Democrats and say, yeah, you want to have a real fight? Well, we're ready to have a real fight. And I think the story you had a little while ago about the guy who drives a truck into a Republican volunteer tent. Well, I mean, it may be a shock to our Democratic friends, but we get pretty irritated when people drive trucks into our sites.
Right.
And, one of the ways you get even is you turn out and vote and prove that Donald Trump, he did better than Reagan, he did better than Carter, he did better than Clinton, he did better than George W. Bush, and he did better than Obama. The best turnout for an incumbent in modern times in New Hampshire.
Iowa, he was pretty strong, too, but the turnout overall made Democrats happy, was strong in New Hampshire. So then they feel a little bit better as they head to Nevada, where we haven't really seen some recent polling. It's an exciting time, Speaker. Everyone's fighting with everybody.
Thank you for joining us.
It's amazing.
Yep.
You won't be bored.
Absolutely not.
Every day's new.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.